Okinawa, November 1963. A drive-in opens in Yajibaru with car hops, a speaker box at every stall, and a frosted mug of root beer with free refills. American servicemen love it. Okinawan families line up too, and they keep lining up for 60 years. Now fly north. Put that same brown, foaming, sweet-spiced soda in front of 100 people in Tokyo and watch the faces change. Not confusion, recognition. Almost everyone says a version of the same thing. This tastes like the medicated compress my grandmother stuck on her shoulder. Same drink, same bottle, same ingredient list. So what exactly is in that glass, and why does one country taste candy and another tastes the pharmacy shelf? If you like food stories built only from labels, regulations, and documented history, subscribe. No guessing, no rumors. Just what the ingredient panel actually says and what the law actually allows. Stick around, because the ingredient at the center of this one is sitting in your medicine cabinet. Here's the thing most people get wrong before they even take a sip. They think root beer is a flavor. It isn't. It's a category, and it's one of the loosest categories in the entire soft drink aisle. Walk down that aisle in any American supermarket and pick up 4 different brown bottles. Read the panels. According to their own labels, the mainstream American root beers are built from roughly the same short list: carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup or sugar, caramel color, sodium benzoate as a preservative, citric or phosphoric acid, and then the phrase that does all the work: natural and artificial flavors. That phrase is where the entire personality of the drink hides. 2 brands can share every other line on the panel and taste like different beverages, because the flavor blend behind that phrase is proprietary, and nobody has to tell you what's in it. The category is wider than the big brands suggest. Alongside root beer sits birch beer, which is still a regional staple in Pennsylvania and parts of the Northeast, and comes in red, brown, and a clear version some producers sell as white birch. Sits sarsaparilla, named for a climbing vine of the genus Smilax that older recipes leaned on. Sits cream soda, which shares a vanilla backbone with several root beers and in some brands is nearly a sibling. These are not 4 unrelated drinks. They are 4 dialects of the same accent, and the boundaries between them are drawn by tradition and marketing, not by any regulation that says where one ends and the next begins. So when someone says root beer, they might mean a sharp, tingly, almost peppery drink. They might mean something creamy and vanilla forward. According to their own labels, some root beers carry caffeine and some carry none at all. Barks, for example, states caffeine on its ingredient panel, while A&W and Mug list no caffeine, and A&W markets itself as caffeine-free. Same category, opposite pharmacology. That alone should tell you how wide the fence is. Now, here's the part that matters for our story. There's a family of aromatic compounds that shows up in this style of drink, and the loudest of them is a wintergreen note. In flavor chemistry, that note comes from methyl salicylate, an ester that occurs naturally in wintergreen and sweet birch, and is also produced synthetically for flavor and fragrance use. In the United States, methyl salicylate has long been listed among substances used as flavoring agents under food additive regulations, in tiny quantities, and Americans have grown up tasting it in root beer, in birch beer, in certain candies and chewing gums, and in that pink wintergreen mint your grandfather kept in the car. And it's worth noticing how early that exposure begins. It's in the sugar shell mints at the register. It's in some brands of toothpaste and mouthwash, where wintergreen sits on the shelf next to peppermint and spearmint as if it were simply the third mint. By the time an American child is old enough to have an opinion about soda, that aroma has already been filed, dozens of times over, under things that are pleasant and sweet and belong in your mouth. That's the American childhood. Now flip the passport. In Japan, most people's first and strongest lifetime exposure to that same wintergreen note did not come from a soda. It came from a pain patch. Hisamitsu Pharmaceutical, founded in 1847 and headquartered in Tasu, Saga Prefecture, launched Salonpas in 1934, and it became one of the most widely recognized household products in the country. Its analgesic patches are built around salicylate chemistry and menthol. If you have ever opened a Japanese medicine drawer, you know the smell instantly. Sharp, cooling, medicinal, unmistakable. And it isn't a niche product hiding in a corner of a pharmacy. Compresses and medicated patches are a whole aisle in a Japanese drugstore, sold in packs of dozens, kept in kitchen drawers and gym bags in the glove box, applied to shoulders and lower backs and knees by people of every age. The brand has spent decades in mainstream advertising and in sports sponsorship. That aroma is not a memory somebody has to reach for. It's ambient. So picture two brains. The American brain files that aroma under dessert. The Japanese brain files it under injury, shoulder ache, grandmother's back. It is the exact same molecule family doing the exact same thing to the nose. Only the memory attached to it is different. This is why millions of people buy this drink wrong on both sides of the ocean. Americans buy it assuming it travels, that a flavor beloved by a couple 100 million people must be universal. It isn't. Visitors to Japan buy it as a novelty at an import shop, take one sip, and conclude that the product is bad or spoiled or somehow off. It isn't that either. Nothing has gone wrong in the bottle. What's happened is that a flavor's meaning changed at the border, and no ingredient panel on earth can print that. And there's a second layer. Root beer in Japan isn't unavailable. That's the lazy version of the story. You can find it and we'll get into exactly where and at what price. What's true is that it never became an everyday drink outside one very specific place, and that place had a very specific history that we'll get to. The rest of the country tried it, understood it, and moved on. Not with horror, with a shrug, which is the harder verdict to argue with. So before we open the regulations, hold on to this. The confusion isn't about a weird foreign product. It's about the fact that flavor is half chemistry and half memory, and only one of those two halves is printed on the bottle. The label tells you what's inside. It never tells you what you'll remember when you smell it. And the label, as you're about to see, is hiding more than you'd think. Let's do the boring part properly, because the boring part is where the truth lives. In the United States, root beer has no standard of identity. There is no federal regulation that says a beverage must contain a particular root, at a particular level, to be sold as root beer. Compare that to something like peanut butter or mayonnaise, where the code of federal regulation spells out minimum composition. Root beer sits in the general soda category, which the FDA covers under carbonated beverage rules. That means the name on the front is marketing. The panel on the back is law. So what does the panel legally mean? Start with the phrase that runs the whole show. Under United States labeling rules, natural flavor means the essential oil, oleoresin, essence, extractive, or similar substance derived from a plant or animal source whose significant function is flavoring rather than nutrition. Artificial flavor means a flavoring substance that isn't derived from those sources. Notice what neither definition requires. Neither one requires disclosure of the individual components. A blend can contain dozens of compounds and be summarized in 3 words. This isn't a scandal, it's the statute, but you should know it's the statute. Next, caramel color. On American panels, it usually appears simply as caramel color. In the European Union and in Japan's additive framework, caramel colors are separated into 4 classes depending on how they're manufactured: plain, caustic sulfite, ammonia, and sulfite ammonia. The class matters because the ammonia processes can generate a byproduct compound that regulators in California listed under Proposition 65, which pushed some beverage makers to adjust their caramel color sourcing in the 2010s. Same 2 words on the front of the bottle, very different manufacturing behind them. Then there's the foam. Some root beers list quillia extract or yucca extract. These are plant saponins used for exactly one reason: head retention. That thick meringue-like collar of foam that makes a root beer float work is not an accident of carbonation. It's an ingredient decision. Where a label says quillia, that's a deliberate choice to build foam. Where it doesn't, the head collapses faster. You can watch the difference in a glass. Now Japan. Japan's food additive control runs through the Food Sanitation Act, originally enacted in 1947 and heavily amended since, and it operates on a positive list logic. Broadly, additives that are designated or on the existing additives list or classified as natural flavoring agents may be used. Anything outside those buckets is not permitted, and imported food carrying an unlisted additive can be stopped at quarantine. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare publishes monitoring and inspection results for imported foods, and violations of additive rules are a recurring category in those published reports, year after year, for products from many countries. Here's the practical consequence for an imported American soda. The exporter doesn't just need a nice label. Every additive in that formula has to line up with Japan's list, and the Japanese language label has to declare the required items in the required way, including the food additives used, under Japan's Food Labeling Act, which consolidated older labeling rules and took effect in 2015, with a transition period that ended in 2020. Preservatives and colors and sweeteners get named. So the same drink that sells in Ohio with a compact panel needs a Japanese sticker that says considerably more. And sweeteners are their own frontier. Japan removed cyclamate from permitted use in 1969, decades before some other markets reconsidered it, and saccharin use has long been restricted by category and level under Japanese rules. If a beverage formula leans on a sweetener that Japan doesn't allow at that level in that food category, that formula does not enter, no matter how popular it is at home. So stack it up. A drink whose name means nothing legally, whose defining flavor is legally allowed to be summarized in 3 words, whose color and foam are engineered by additives that are classified differently in different countries, crossing into a market with a positive list system and a rewritten labeling law. That's not a conspiracy. That's just international food law doing its job. But it explains why the version you find on a Tokyo import shelf may not be identical to the one in an American vending machine, and why nobody is obligated to point that out to you on the front of the bottle. The back of the bottle is where the honesty is. It always is. Now the history, and it's stranger than the marketing lets on, because the root in root beer is largely gone and a regulator took it out. The commercial story usually starts with Charles Elmer Hires, a Philadelphia pharmacist who began selling a root beer preparation in the mid-1870s and promoted it heavily around the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia. His product was originally sold as a powdered or liquid extract that households mixed and fermented themselves at home with sugar and yeast. That's worth sitting with. The original consumer experience of this drink was a home brewing kit, not a bottle. One packet was advertised as making several gallons. Hires later moved to bottled and fountain formats, and the brand became one of the defining names of American soft drinks, marketed with the language of health and temperance rather than indulgence, positioned as a wholesome drink for the whole family at a moment when the temperance movement was a genuine commercial force in American life. That positioning is the reason the word beer survives in the name at all. It described the method, a lightly fermented, barely alcoholic home brew, not the intent, and it's why the category sailed through prohibition without difficulty. While other beverage industries were dismantled, root beer stands multiplied. The other pillar arrived in 1919, when Roy W. Allen began selling a root beer recipe in Lodi, California, and later partnered with Frank Wright. The initials of Allen and Wright gave the world A and W, and by the mid-1920s the operation had grown into franchise drive-in stands, an early template for the American roadside restaurant, complete with car hops and the heavy glass mug kept in a freezer so the outside frosted over the moment it was filled. That mug is not decoration. Cold glass keeps the foam head standing and slows the carbonation loss, which is why the ritual survived a century. So where's the root? Traditional recipes leaned on sassafras, and specifically Sassafras albidum, the North American tree whose root bark gives that distinctive warm, sweet, faintly camphorous aroma. It was already deeply embedded in North American folk medicine and in colonial-era export trade long before anyone carbonated it. For decades, sassafras was the signature. Then came the reckoning. Sassafras root bark and its oil are rich in safrole. In the late 1950s, toxicology research in laboratory animals linked safrole to liver damage and tumor formation. The FDA acted at the start of the 1960s, and safrole, along with sassafras oil and sassafras bark, was prohibited from use as a food additive. The relevant provision sits in the Code of Federal Regulations at 21 CFR 189.18, which bans safrole, oil of sassafras and sassafras bark from use in human food. The industry pivoted to safrole-free sassafras extract, made by stripping the offending compound out of the oil, and to flavor blends that reconstruct the impression of the original with other aromatic materials, including vanilla, wintergreen, anise, licorice root, and spice notes. Read that again. The classic American flavor that people insist is the taste of tradition is, in its modern commercial form, a reconstruction created after a regulatory ban. What you're nostalgic for is the substitute. And here's where the wintergreen thread tightens. When the sassafras backbone was pulled, the remaining aromatic pillars carried more weight, and in a lot of formulations that meant a more prominent minty, medicinal top note. The compound family responsible has a documented safety history of its own, not in soda, where amounts are minute, but in concentrated topical and essential oil form. Public health bodies and poison control centers have repeatedly warned that concentrated wintergreen oil and high-strength salicylate rubs are dangerous if swallowed, particularly by children, because a small volume of concentrated oil carries a salicylate load far beyond what a beverage flavoring ever would. Reported poisoning cases involving concentrated methyl salicylate products, including a widely reported case in the United States in 2007 involving a teenage athlete's excessive use of a salicylate muscle rub, are why those products carry warnings. That is a topical product story, not a soda story, and the distinction matters enormously. Dose is the whole argument, but it explains why the aroma is culturally locked to medicine in the first place. It genuinely is medicine chemistry, used at trivial levels for flavor. Meanwhile, in Japan, the regulatory culture that decides what crosses the border was forged by its own hard lessons. The Food Sanitation Act, enacted in 1947, is the spine of the system, and it works on a positive list logic. An additive is permitted because it has been examined and designated, not merely because nobody has banned it. The Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare designates those additives, and quarantine stations at the major ports and airports screen imported food consignments against them, with importers required to file notification before goods clear. That caution has origins. The Morinaga arsenic milk poisoning of 1955, in which arsenic contamination in a powdered milk additive harmed thousands of infants, and the Kanmi rice oil contamination case of 1968 in northern Kyushu, are landmark events in Japanese food safety history. Both of them cases where an additive or a process contaminant reached ordinary households through an ordinary product. Later, the 2008 incident involving contaminated frozen dumplings imported from China triggered another wave of scrutiny and contributed to institutional changes, including the eventual establishment of the Consumer Affairs Agency in 2009. Japan didn't build a cautious import inspection culture out of xenophobia. It built it out of memory and out of court cases that ran for decades. Put the two histories side by side and the picture sharpens. America took a wild root, industrialized it, sold it as a health tonic, lost the root to a carcinogen ruling, rebuilt the flavor from a chemist's palate and kept the name. Japan built an additive positive list and a quarantine inspection regime after real domestic tragedies, and it evaluates every imported formula against that list, line by line, no matter how beloved the brand is somewhere else. Neither country did anything sinister. They just arrived at the same brown bottle from opposite directions, carrying opposite baggage. And when the bottle finally landed in Tokyo, the baggage is what people tasted. All right, practical section. Put the history down and pick the bottle up, because there's a way to read a soda panel that turns you into the most annoying and best informed person in the aisle. Rule 1. Read the order, not the words. Ingredient lists are ordered by weight, greatest first. On almost any regular soda, carbonated water leads and the sweetener sits second. That second slot tells you the entire economic story of the product before you read anything else. Cane sugar, beet sugar, high fructose corn syrup, or a high-intensity sweetener with a bulking agent. If the second ingredient is water again in some form, or if the sweetener has dropped to third or fourth behind an acid, you are holding a low sugar or diet formulation, whether or not the front panel shouts about it. Rule 2. Count the flavor words. Natural flavors alone. Natural and artificial flavors. Natural flavor with a named botanical. Each of those is a different disclosure decision. None of them is automatically better or worse for safety, but the presence of a named botanical, say vanilla extract or licorice root extract spelled out, means the maker chose to identify a real material instead of hiding it in the blend. That's a signal of confidence and usually of cost. Rule 3. Find the preservative and ask why it's there. Sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate are the usual ones in soft drinks. They work in acidic conditions, which is exactly what a carbonated soda is. If a beverage has no chemical preservative listed, look for the reason. Hot fill processing, aseptic packaging, very high acidity, or very high sugar. There's always a reason. Preservation is never free. Rule 4. Learn the foam and mouthfeel additives. Quillia extract, yucca extract, and gum acacia are the classics in this category. Acacia and similar gums also help keep flavor oils suspended so the drink doesn't develop a ring of oil at the neck. When you see these, you're looking at a formulation designed for a specific sensory outcome, not a filler. In a root beer, the foaming agent is doing the same job the frozen mug does at a drive-in, building a head that holds aroma over the surface of the drink, so you smell it before you taste it. Rule 5. Check the acid. Phosphoric acid gives a sharper, drier bite, and it's the classic cola acid. Citric acid gives a fruitier, rounder tartness. Where a dark soda uses citric rather than phosphoric, the maker is aiming for a softer profile. Small line on the panel, big difference in the mouth. Rule 6, and this is the one people skip. Read the caffeine statement. In the United States, added caffeine must be declared in the ingredient list, and many brands also print a milligram figure. In a category where some products carry caffeine and others don't, assuming is how you end up wide awake at midnight. Check every time, because formulations get revised, and a brand you drank 10 years ago may not be the same liquid today. Rule 7. Cross-check the ingredient list against the nutrition panel and check the serving size before you read a single number. A tall bottle that lists 2 or more servings will quietly have every figure on the panel. Sugar grams, sodium, calories, all of it. The panel is honest. The arithmetic is on you. Rule 8. On imported product, compare the 2 labels. An imported bottle in Japan will carry the original panel plus a Japanese language importer sticker. Under Japan's Food Labeling Act framework, that sticker should identify the product name, ingredients including food additives, net content, best before date, storage method, country of origin, and the importer's name and address. If a bottle in an import shop has no Japanese sticker at all, that's not an exotic collector's item. That's a labeling problem, and it's the single fastest tell that something came in through a channel that skipped a step. And read the sticker even if you can't read Japanese, because additive names are often written in a form you can match to the English panel, and a mismatch means you are looking at a market-specific reformulation rather than the original recipe. Rule 9. Date codes. Best before on a soda is a quality date, not a safety cliff. What degrades first is carbonation, then flavor top notes, then in diet formulations, the sweetener itself. A bottle stored warm ages faster than the code implies. A can stored cool and dark often tastes fine past it. The code assumes the manufacturer's recommended storage. Your garage in August is not that. Rule 10. Package tells you shelf life. Aluminum cans block light and oxygen almost completely, and the interior is lined so the drink never touches bare metal. Glass blocks oxygen but not light, which is one reason so many of these bottles are brown in the first place. PET plastic slowly lets carbon dioxide out and oxygen in, which is why the same beverage in plastic has a shorter recommended window than in a can, and why the small bottles go flat faster than the large ones relative to their volume. The bottle is an ingredient in the shelf life equation. And the last one, the mindset. Never argue with the panel. If the panel and the front label disagree in spirit, the panel is what's legally binding and the front is what's legally permitted. Marketing lives on the front. Truth lives on the back. Turn the bottle around always, and the aisle stops being able to lie to you. Now, here's the strange part, and it's the piece that breaks the whole simple narrative in half. There's a place in Japan where root beer is not a punchline. It's a childhood memory, a hometown drink, a thing people crave when they move away. That place is Okinawa. The reason is administrative history. After the Second World War, Okinawa was placed under United States administration, and it stayed that way until reversion to Japanese sovereignty on May 15, 1972. For 27 years, the islands ran on a different set of arrangements from the rest of Japan, including a period when the currency in circulation was the US dollar. Traffic ran on the right until a famous overnight switch back to the left in 1978. American food culture didn't arrive in Okinawa as an import novelty. It arrived as infrastructure. In November 1963, A&W opened a drive-in in Yajibaru, in what is now Okinawa City. It is widely documented as the first American fast food restaurant chain location in Japan, opening years before the more famous burger chains reached the mainland in the early 1970s. Okinawans call the chain by a nickname, Enda, and the brand's frosted mugs and free refills of root beer became a local institution. Some branches kept the full drive-in ritual, where you park, press a button on a post beside the car, order through a speaker, and have the tray brought out to your window. Today the chain operates a couple dozen locations, concentrated in Okinawa, with an outlet at Naha Airport that functions as a de facto souvenir stop, and the root beer is sold in cans and cups to take home the way another region sells a local sweet. So the flavor didn't fail in Japan. It succeeded completely in the part of Japan where it arrived early, arrived embedded in everyday life, and arrived before people had a fixed reference for what that aroma meant. Where it landed on adults who already had a lifetime of associating salicylate and menthol with a pain patch, it read as medicine. Where it landed on children going to a drive-in with their families in the 1960s, it read as a treat. Same molecule, different first memory. Okinawa is the control group that proves the point. And notice the shape of the local defense of it. Okinawans will tell newcomers the same thing every time. The first glass is strange, the third glass is yours. That's not a chemistry claim. That's an initiation, and it only works when the culture around you has already decided the drink is worth the effort. There's a second twist that ruins the lazy version of this story even harder. Japan does not reject medicinal, herbal, unusual soft drinks, not remotely. This is a country with a deep and enthusiastic soft drink culture, including drinks built around bitter, herbal, and functional profiles. Vending machines carry unsweetened barley tea and green tea by the billion of servings. There are long-selling tonic-style drinks sold in small glass bottles that taste unmistakably of vitamins. There is a whole domestic market for bitter green vegetable drinks that people buy on purpose. And Dr. Pepper, a soda whose flavor profile also sits in that spiced, cherry almond, faintly medicinal family, has been sold in Japan for decades. Coca-Cola's Japanese operations have distributed Dr. Pepper there since the 1970s, and it holds a steady, if regional, following, with particularly strong distribution in the Kanto area. So a spiced dark soda absolutely can survive in the Japanese market. The problem was never spice. And then there's the neighbor case, which is the one I find genuinely remarkable. Cross to Taiwan. Song, founded in 1925, produces a sarsaparilla soft drink, known locally as shashi, that has been a national favorite for generations. Sarsaparilla and root beer occupy the same flavor neighborhood, that same sweet, herbal, wintergreen adjacent territory. In Taiwan, it isn't exotic. It's the default, poured at family dinners, stocked in every convenience store, tied to a brand old enough to have lived through the entire modern history of the island. There's even a long-standing local habit of adding a pinch of salt to it, and a folk belief that it settles the stomach. Some drinkers warm it. Same aromatic family that Tokyo reads as a compress, Taipei reads as comfort. Well, let's be honest about what the evidence supports and what it doesn't. It is well documented that root beer never achieved mainstream distribution in mainland Japan, and that many Japanese consumers describe the taste in medicinal terms, comparing it to analgesic patches. It is also documented that the same drink is beloved in Okinawa, that a chemically adjacent flavor is a national staple in Taiwan, and that another spiced American soda sells steadily in Japan. Anyone telling you Japan simply can't handle the flavor is skipping the evidence that contradicts them, and skipping an entire prefecture while they do it. What's really happening is narrower and more interesting. A flavor's meaning is assigned by whichever institution introduces it to you first. In mainland Japan, that institution was the pharmaceutical industry, and it got there in 1934 with a product that ended up in nearly every household. In Okinawa, that institution was a drive-in restaurant in 1963. In Taiwan, it was a beverage company in the 1920s. The chemistry never changed. The introduction did. Timing wasn't a detail in this story. Timing was the whole story. And once a country's collective nose has filed a smell under medicine, no marketing budget on earth refiles it. You can't advertise your way out of a memory. Let's follow the money, because the economics explain the cheap versions better than any taste test ever could. A can of soda is one of the most cost-optimized objects in the grocery store. Strip it down and you get 4 cost centers: the sweetener, the flavor, the package, and the freight. Everything interesting happens when a manufacturer squeezes one of those. Start with the sweetener, because it's the biggest line by weight. In the United States, high fructose corn syrup became dominant in soft drinks from the early 1980s onward, driven by corn economics and by sugar import policy that kept domestic sugar prices above world prices. That's not opinion, it's decades of published agricultural economics. So on a lot of American panels, you'll see high fructose corn syrup in slot 2, while the same brand bottled in another country may list sugar, because in that country cane or beet sugar was simply the cheaper or the customary option. This is why the imported glass bottle version of a familiar drink tastes different to people. Often it isn't nostalgia. It's a different sweetener with a different sweetness curve, and the panel says so plainly. Now the flavor. This is where the gap between premium and budget really opens. A flavor blend built partly on genuine botanical extracts, vanilla, licorice root, spice oleoresins, costs meaningfully more per liter of finished beverage than one built primarily on synthesized aroma chemicals. The label rules let both be summarized briefly, which is exactly why the phrase natural and artificial flavors covers such a wide quality range. Vanilla is the clearest example, because natural vanilla extract is one of the most price-volatile agricultural commodities on Earth, with well-documented price spikes after cyclones damaged Madagascar's growing regions in the late 2010s. When vanilla spikes, formulation teams across the industry face a choice, and the panel is where you see which choice they made. Then the acids and preservatives, which are pennies but do heavy lifting. Cheaper formulations often push acids slightly higher to create the impression of brightness that the flavor blend can't provide on its own. More bite, less depth. You'll feel it as a drink that's sharp at the front and empty at the back. Carbonation is a cost too. Higher carbonation levels require more gas, better fill technology, and stronger packaging, and they mask flaws by adding perceived crispness. Lower carbonation is cheaper and more forgiving of a slow bottling line, and it tastes flabby. Now the package, and here's where the imported bottle on a Tokyo shelf gets expensive. Soda is heavy and mostly water. Shipping water across an ocean is a famously bad idea, which is why global beverage companies license local bottling rather than exporting finished product wherever volume justifies it. When there isn't enough volume to justify a local bottling agreement, the product travels as finished goods in containers, and you pay for the ocean freight, the customs handling, the importer's compliance work including the Japanese language labeling, the distributor margin, and the retailer margin. That's how a can that costs the equivalent of $1 at home lands on an import shop shelf at several times that. And that price stack creates a feedback loop that finishes the story. High shelf price means low trial. Low trial means low repeat purchase. Low repeat purchase means no bottler ever concludes there's a business case for domestic production. No domestic production means the price stays high. The flavor never gets the fair shake that domestic bottling would give it, which is precisely the shake that Dr. Pepper got in Japan through a local distribution arrangement. So when someone asks why the imported version tastes flat or tired, look at the chain, not the recipe. A finished beverage that spends weeks in a container, possibly through warm ports, then sits under retail lighting, has lost carbonation and top notes before you ever open it. Nothing was reformulated. It just aged badly in transit. Which brings the cheap version question into focus. A budget soda in this category isn't usually cheaper because someone added something sinister. It's cheaper because the sweetener is the low-cost option, the flavor blend leans synthetic, the acid is nudged up, the carbonation is nudged down, and the package is the thinnest one the filling line can handle. Every one of those choices is legal, disclosed in outline on the panel, and completely invisible on the front label. The cost cuts don't hide in the ingredients list. They hide in the proportions, and proportions are the one thing you never get to see. So what do you actually do with all this? Here's the practical playbook. and it works whether you're stocking a prepper pantry or just trying to keep a case of soda drinkable. By the can. If your goal is storage, aluminum wins and it isn't close. A sealed can is effectively opaque and effectively impermeable, so light-driven flavor degradation and gas loss are minimal. Plastic is the worst of the three for long storage because carbon dioxide slowly migrates out through the wall and oxygen migrates in. Glass sits in the middle, excellent barrier, but it lets light through, and light is what breaks down flavor compounds and colors. If you're buying glass for storage, store it in the dark or in the case box. Understand what the date actually promises. Beverage manufacturers publish general guidance rather than hard rules, and the widely cited industry pattern for full-sugar carbonated soft drinks is roughly 9 months of best quality in cans and glass, and around 3 months in plastic bottles. Diet and reduced-calorie versions are shorter, often cited around 3 to 4 months, because high-intensity sweeteners like aspartame degrade over time and the drink turns thin and cardboardy long before anything unsafe happens. That is a quality window, not a safety deadline. An unopened, undamaged can of full-sugar soda stored cool and dark is generally still safe well beyond it. It just won't be at its best. Store cool, stable, and dark. The enemy is heat and heat cycling. A pantry at a steady room temperature beats a garage that swings from freezing to baking every single time. Every warm cycle accelerates flavor loss and, in plastic, gas loss. Keep cases off concrete floors, on a shelf or pallet, because concrete moves temperature and moisture into cardboard. Never let cans freeze. Water expands, the conseam is the weak point, and a freeze-thaw cycle can compromise the seal or split it outright. A frozen and thawed can that looks fine may have a microscopic breach. Don't gamble on it. Rotate ruthlessly. First in, first out, marked with the purchase month and marker on the case, not just the printed code. This is the single habit that separates a working pantry from a shrine of expired boxes. Inspect before you drink. Reject any can that's bulging, leaking, heavily dented at the seam or rim or rusted through at the base. Surface dents on the body are cosmetic. Seam damage is not. On glass, check for a compromised crown cap and for any sign the fill level has dropped. On plastic, a bottle that has gone soft or lost its firmness has already lost carbonation, and that's your answer. Now the smart move for long-term storage, and this is where the prepper logic beats the grocery logic. Don't store finished soda for the long haul. Store the components. Root beer extract, the concentrated flavoring sold for home soda making and baking, is shelf-stable for years in a sealed bottle kept cool and dark, and it takes up a fraction of the space of the equivalent volume of finished beverage. A small bottle of extract plus sugar plus your own carbonated water gives you far more servings per shelf inch than any case of cans, and you control the sweetness. That's the same logic Charles Hires was selling households in the 1870s, which is a nice loop to close. If you do go that route, read the extract label the same way. Look at whether it lists a carrier like alcohol, propylene glycol, or glycerin, whether the flavors are described as natural, artificial, or both, and whether caramel color is present. And note that any legitimately sold extract in the United States will be safrole-free, because that's the regulation, not a marketing claim. Unopened product. Once carbonation escapes, it's gone. A resealed bottle in the fridge holds acceptable fizz for a couple of days at best, and the colder it is, the more gas stays dissolved. Cold liquid holds carbon dioxide better than warm liquid. That's physics, and it's also why serving temperature matters more than people think. A soda served at proper refrigerator temperature reads crisper and less sweet. The same soda at room temperature reads syrupy and heavy, and in this particular flavor family, the medicinal top notes get louder as it warms. Which means, if you ever want to give this drink its fairest possible test, serve it genuinely cold, in a chilled glass, with the foam allowed to build. That's what a 1963 drive-in in Okinawa figured out with a frosted mug. Temperature isn't a garnish, it's part of the formula. So no, Japan doesn't hate root beer. Mainland Japan met a molecule in 1934 in a pain patch and met it again decades later in a soda, and the first meeting one. Okinawa met it in 1963 at a drive-in, and there it's beloved. Taiwan met the same flavor family in the 1920s and made it a national drink. The chemistry never argued with anybody. Memory did all the talking. And that's the real lesson for anyone who reads labels seriously. The panel tells you composition. It never tells you meaning, and meaning is what people actually swallow. If this was useful, subscribe, because we do this every week, only from labels, regulations, and documented history. And tell me in the comments which subject you want next. Instant coffee, canned tuna, honey, vanilla extract. Pick one and I'll take it apart.